Hello, this is Mr. Layman, and if you're watching this, you're here to check out some awesome, super cool social studies content, which is what I'm about to deliver. Today, we're also going to be talking about resources in terms of finite resources and renewable resources and all that stuff, and how trade is super helpful and awesome and cool. These are primarily designed for my ancient history class, but if you're just studying social studies or history and want to learn some more, great, you're in the right spot. So, without further ado, let's jump in. All right, so this is 6.1b, resources, human geography, and the trade of those resources. By the end of this class, you will be able to list 3 kinds of resources and give an example of each. You will also be able to explain how languages develop. So let's not waste any time and let's jump straight in. Resources. Resources are material or energy that people need and value and use for some benefit to themselves, or they're helpful in some way. The opposite of a resource is pollution. Pollution is some kind of damage to an environment, or it's a waste product, or it's something that you don't want and doesn't have a benefit to you, or isn't helpful. So we would look at pollution as basically the opposite of a resource. Frequently, people live near where they can find resources. There are several types of resources that people need, and some of those resources are more important than others. I'd also like to point out that those resources can change over time. 300 years ago, nobody was using water for like electricity, or even 1,000 years ago, you're not using it for anything other than drinking and farming. So you're not really using it to power, lights and stuff. You didn't have electricity that long, 200 years ago. So as people's needs change, their resource needs also change. Note, some kinds of resources are going to be more than one type of resource. Water is a great example. You can use it for drinking or farming, but you can also use it for energy. I've got a picture of the Hoover Dam right here, and the lights in where I'm recording this right now are powered by electricity from the water at that dam. Water is falling past the turbine and it's turning it, which is creating electricity, which keeps my lights on and also allows me to record this. So aside from drinking the water, it's used for electricity, but you can also use it as a shelter. Water is frozen into ice. You can cut it into blocks, stack them up. So something like an igloo can be built into a shelter. So water can be used for drinking. You can use it for housing. You could use it for electricity. It has multiple uses. The most important resources to humans are vital resources. These are the resources that keep a person alive. So water, food, air is a resource. These are the first priorities for people. So if you're stranded on a desert island, you're not going to build an electrical substation. You're going to try to find water. Or if you're freezing to death, you're probably going to want to make a fire more than you are going to want to start mining for gold. Material resources, some sort of useful substance for people. Those are material things, some kind of physical object. It could be a building material like stone, something you make into something else like metal, something you use like fiber for clothing, wood for a house. Material resources are used to create objects and can be traded easily. So it's a physical object that you can also drag around. So I have lots of Sharpies. As a teacher, I keep acquiring Sharpies. So I have lots of Sharpies as a material resource. If you ever need to trade me Sharpies for something, I have a surplus amount of Sharpies. Energy resources are resources that are used for energy. This could be wind for a windmill, wood for a fire. Again, you could also use that wood to build a house. Coal for a power plant, or gasoline for a car. If it's making electricity or heat, it's probably some kind of energy resource. Humans use energy to make their tasks simple. I don't have a lot of, I'm not dependent on the sun right now to light my video. I have, how many lights are in here? 4 lights in this room. So I'm using energy to power those lights. When I cook the food on my stove, I'm using an electrical stove to create heat. You might have a gas stove that creates, fire to boil some water. So you're using electricity or some kind of energy resource to increase the energy of an object. In this case, your food, so you're eating hot food. Non-renewable resources, you can't really make more of them. They are finite, which means there's only a certain amount of them. Oil and coal on the planet right now. Once we use that oil and coal and natural gas as an energy resource, that's it. It's gone. Yes, we can technically make more of that, but the process to make more of those resources is way more than the amount of energy you would get from using them. So we refer to these as non-renewable resources. You're not really going to make any more of them once you burn them or use them or remove them from the planet. I don't know if you wanted to launch all the coal into the sun. I don't know why you would do that, but you would not be able to get more coal. Copper is a good example of a non-renewable resource. And I like copper because right now, copper is in thirds on the planet. 1/3 of the copper is in use. There's copper in these wires that are going from my microphone cable, and electrical wiring is made with copper. 1/3 of it is unused. It's in the ground as an ore that we could mine or dig up. And 1/3 of it we've thrown away. So it's at the point where it might be easier to just go dig all the copper out of a landfill than to mine it out of the earth. But we're not going to make any more copper. The amount of copper that's on the planet right now, that's it. We're using some of it. We have not used some of it, and we've thrown the rest of it away. Renewable resources are resources that return over time. A farm growing carrots, someone picks the carrots and then they plant some more carrots and boom, you've got more carrots. Cool. There are more trees in the United States today than there were 100 years ago because we've been planting trees. We are aware that we cut down trees and use that wood as a resource. So we want to have more trees, so we're planting more trees. Recycling is also a version of making a renewable resource. Recycling makes new things out of old things. So sometimes you might refer to something like copper when you're recycling copper or aluminum cans as renewable resources because you're making new versions of that old product. Anytime you're making a new something, it is renewable. The next section about perpetual and infinite resources are also sometimes referred to as renewable resources because you're kind of making new versions of them if it's something like electrical power, but you're not going to run out of them. So I tend to prefer to call these things perpetual or infinite resources. And oftentimes these are energy resources. And they last forever, more or less. The sun, the wind, the ocean, they're not going anywhere. You're not going to run out of wind. If you don't have wind anymore, it's because there's no air on the planet. But solar power, wind power, things like that, those are used for energy resources, and they are essentially infinite. Yes, the sun is going to run out of energy in like 5 billion years. So it's not really a concern of mine that we're going to run out of sunlight. So we review these things as either perpetual or infinite resources, but a lot of times they're also couched under this renewable resource version because since they're energy resources, you are not using a finite resource to create them. You're using a perpetual resource, which means that you're making like new versions of that energy or electricity or heat or whatever you're doing. So when you're using something like solar energy or wind power, a lot of times these are called renewable resources, but they're really perpetual or infinite resources. One resource might have multiple uses. Wood, for example, can be used for, well, you tell me. I've listed a couple already. I know I've talked about burning wood for heat. You could also do it for light. If you have like a torch in a dark cave, you're burning wood for light. Wood can be used to build stuff with. These walls are made of wood. The shelf is made of wood. Paper is made out of wood. My notebook right here. Wood's also usually used in things like tables and chairs and building materials and stuff like that. So it's not just as a fuel or as an energy resource. It's also a material resource. You could even use it as a vital resource. If it's something like an apple tree, then you're saying, well, it's not the wood of the tree I'm using, but it's the apples of the tree. Great. Which you might say is a renewable source because you can plant more of the trees and you can just have it keep growing apples. Cool. That fits into several different categories. I'd like to point out that all resources when used by people have effects on the environment. Driving a car creates pollution. Building roads that are black makes a city hotter because dark colored objects absorb sunlight and light colored objects reflect sunlight. You can try this for yourself, by going outside on a hot sunny day in a black t-shirt and then going outside in a white t-shirt and see which one makes you feel cooler. The white t-shirt is going to reflect light energy. The black t-shirt is going to absorb light energy. So if you build roads that are all black in a city, the black roads will absorb all the sunlight and the heat and make the city warmer. Digging up coal destroys mountains. That looks like that. That's what's called a strip mine. They're stripping all the materials out of the earth, and it leaves a big giant pit afterwards. Sometimes people do not have access to the resources that they need or they want, or they have a resource, but they have way too much of that one resource and not enough of another. This is called a surplus. They can get this resource through fighting, but it's more effective way to do this is through trade. Trade is the exchange of something for something else. Trade is giving something I have to get something that I want. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you keep taking my class, I talk about trade a lot because trade's pretty awesome. It is very helpful to humans. Trade, it's a good thing. It's so good I bumped my microphone right then. Trade develops language, and you can exchange ideas through resources. You can really only get things from other people in two ways. Violence, which could include just going in and punching that person and taking their things. It could include stealing things. It could include, like, I don't know, chasing them away, or trade. People at Target just want me to quietly trade them money for pants. And quite honestly, I'd just like to trade nicely so I can shop there again. That's all. I'm not going to make a big, loud, noisy fuss at the Target. They want to sell me pants, and I'd like to buy some pants. I have money, and I would like pants. They have lots of pants and would like money. Since we both need to communicate this idea to each other in order to trade, that helps develop language. If I said to you, voilà, un stylo. Je voudrais 3 francs pour cet stylo. Toi. You're getting the idea that, okay, this means stylo means pen, and I'm asking for 3 of something. Toi, franc, which you're probably going to assume is money. So you can use context clues to figure that out, even if you don't speak French. I'm probably butchering my French at this point, but yeah, you can help communicate an idea without having to even speak the same language, because you're communicating that through trade. I have a thing and I'd like to sell it to you. Sometimes I used to do this in class where I'd go over to a kid and just speak complete gibberish and just try to change like a Sharpie for a pen and just try to swap them back and forth. I could use violence. I could just run over there and just take the pen, but then you're going to get in trouble. And when you do violence to people, they're going to want to do violence back to you, or there's going to be consequences. But quite honestly, you have a surplus of something, just do trade. It's way more effective in the long run. Trade can develop peace and helps humans work together. While not as exciting as fighting or war, trade is often a path to success for people. If I want to buy pants at Target, I need to be nice. I can't be running around in there screaming and wielding an axe. Pictured here, how to get people to not work with you. What I like about this photo is that it is, when I Googled it, I was looking for like a Viking warrior. And the Vikings figured this out. Yes, they're a bunch of bloodthirsty raiders who basically use terrorism to get what they want. But at a certain point, they realize it's more effective to just be nice and trade with people than it is to run around with a sword. So even the Vikings figured that out, that trade is a better long-term investment than violence. Because once you take all this gold, oh, I stole all your money. Okay, great. But what are you going to do with it? You can't eat it. You have to buy vital resources with it. Oh, you have to trade. And people aren't going to want to trade with you if you are unpleasant to deal with. They're going to view you as a bloodthirsty Viking. Being like nice to people is beneficial. And if the Vikings figured it out, then can't we all figure that out? So the last thing I want to talk about is labor or work. Labor is you're doing some kind of task or a job, or you're doing something that gets you resources. And this can also be a form of trade. A farmer picks apples, eats some of what they pick, and trades the extra food for Literally whatever the farmer wants. Money to buy shoes, pay rent. Maybe they could just trade directly to people, exchanging their extra apples for someone else's surplus wood. Each person has resources and wants another resource, so they trade. Mr. Layman, that's me, is doing this right now. I'm trading my historical education and my teaching skills to you for money. Or if you're watching this on my free preview day, I'm giving it to you because I want you to be a better person. But even that is a form of trade. One day you'll be able to vote on laws I'll need to obey. And I'd prefer for you to be educated. So you vote for laws that are actually helpful. And it's helpful to all of us. And so I'm kind of trading you some knowledge so that I can get more beneficial laws and policies made. So you're always kind of trading something with someone else. Trade is beneficial to everyone. That's why I like it. Even the Vikings figured that out. So good stuff. All right, so it's time for a wrap up. So how does trade lead to the development of language? Can you explain it? Can you also list 3 forms of resources and tell me an example of each? Alrighty. I hope you've had a super awesome, cool day, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.